Okay, I think we're going to start shortly. We're still waiting for a few last participants, including some of our speakers, to join us, but we don't want to keep everybody waiting, so I think we're going to start soon. You have already looked at the title of the session, so maybe I can close it and we can all see each other. And I would just apologize, first of all, on behalf of the LDnet president, Peter Ramsden, who was planning to open this meeting, but he has some technical issues, so he will join us when he can. And in the meantime, as vice president of LDnet, I would like to welcome you all very warmly to the second LDnet webinar. It is the fifth LDnet webinar of the 2025 series, but the second on this topic, on new architecture of EU policies and funds and the place for local development. We thought this was so important a topic and so relevant at this time that we really wanted to spend 2 sessions on that discussion. We were also, when we designed the whole series of webinars earlier this year, we were also hoping that more would be already known by end of May, where we plan to have that second discussion. And we thought that there would be something concrete from the European Commission to respond to, or at least some more concrete rumors, if I can say, or something more specific that we would know about what is being planned for the funding period post 2027. But at the moment, we're not really there yet. But we still think there are quite a lot of interesting developments, in particular developments in terms of civil society responses to what is already known about the future plans of the European Commission. And some of these responses we would like to make to showcase or to discuss today and see how we can find maybe certain common points, certain differences between them, and to see how they can possibly contribute to making this new programming period more appropriate from the point of view of local civil societies and local development experts. I see that Peter finally managed to join us, Peter Ramsden, our president. So I have already opened on your behalf, but you can still add a few words and then move on.
Thank you, Ursula, and very many apologies. My laptop has become allergic to Teams, and it won't do certain things. And it won't let me change my background again, which you can only do when you're in as a speaker, I think. Anyway, welcome everybody. I think this is the 4th in our spring series of webinars. 5th. Apologies for that. I'm very pleased to welcome our 3 speakers and also our terminator, Joachim. I'll pass straight away back, but I'd like to emphasize that it seems to me that this is a crunch year in terms of the future of the policies, the territorial place-based policies that we're most so concerned about. So let's take inspiration from what our speakers have to say and think deeply about how we can move forward. I'll be joining back in when we come to the questions. Back to you, Ursula.
We thought to start today with a presentation of what has been achieved since our last meeting, which I will do in a moment. And then we thought to invite, first of all, Serafín Vidal, who was with us in the first session of on this topic, Serafin, who represent ADO, but who was also strongly involved in formulating different positions concerning cohesion policy and the special territorial dimension of EU funding. And then we have two speakers representing rural civil societies. It just happens rural, but it's not exclusively about rural issues. We have, or we are going hopefully to have Radim Seršen, who is a deputy minister in Czechia, but he's also a member of the Committee of the Regions and chair of Rural PAC Coordination Group. And we have Piotr Sabłocha, who is president of the Polish Leader Network and the European Leader Association for Rural Development, who is specifically vocal about local bottom-up development, LEADER and CLLD, community-led local development. Then we will have some discussion, and then we are very lucky to have with us Joaquim Oliveira from used to be in a formal advisor to the Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, responsible for cohesion reforms. He was also working in OECD. So he will comment from the policymaker's perspective or economic perspective as well, like what are the reasons of some of the potential changes in the architecture of EU funding, and how we, the local development crowd, can make an impact on that. So I would just very quickly start with my own presentation. So I will share my screen again in a moment, trying to make sure that all the screens are the right ones. Okay. So I said I would try to remind everybody a little bit about what happened since our last meeting, since our meeting in February. But before I do that, I just it's not a recapitulation of our discussion, of course, in February, but it's just to bring into perspective those of us who were not present in our discussion in February. This is just a small impression. It's an image that tries to reproduce the complexity of local development funding in the current EU funding period, with the common agriculture policy, with its community-led local development in rural areas, but also the community-led local development in the cohesion policy, which also contributes to the development of rural as well as urban and coastal areas. But there are also other instruments, such as integrated territorial investments, and these can be applicable in urban or rural, urban or non-urban, let's say, areas. And then there are other tools and other sources of funding. So the picture is quite complex, but on the other hand, we feel that especially those local development tools such as CLLD and ITIs, territorial, let's say, tools, are essential for the local communities in those different types of areas, which is why we are starting that discussion. Now, from our discussion last time, I also captured one slide from Serafin's presentation, which shows the leaked ideas from mainly the European Commission, from some parts of the European Commission, who are trying to simplify the current picture, saying there would not be so many programs, there would not be so many national member state plans. Let's try to simplify that and have it all more or less straightforward. That was the intention. That was the leaked concept at the time when we met in February. We also had.
Can I just
Yes.
interrupt? Are you changing slides?
Yes. Am I not? Are you not seeing?
No,
them?
You're not on the full screen.
I'm sorry. Then in that case, I'm really sorry. I should have. Why didn't I share that screen? I thought I should. Okay, it's really not that one, and it's not that slide either. I don't know why. I want to get out of that slide. Okay, maybe this will work now. So, see if it works again. And you tell me if it's working once if I go.
It's not on full screen.
Is it not
full
now?
Screen? It is now.
It's full,
yeah.
And it's changing? Okay, sorry. So
yes,
that was the picture I was talking about earlier, this complex architecture of funds today with the different funding sources and different instruments, CLLD, ITI, and national instruments. Then I mentioned Seraphine's presentation from February, where we had this informal, let's say, image concept of what the Commission finds extremely complex in the current period and is trying to simplify into a single plan for each member state and possibly even a single fund. And then this is a slide from the presentation we had also in February by Stefan Carr, our colleagues from LDnet and also from the University of Stadtfeld. And he specializes in multi-funded CLLD across different funds, but mainly in cohesion policy. And he was showing how the situation is developing in the 2021-27 periods, and that also makes us think about certain trends we can expect in the next period. And finally, I would like to share with you what has been happening since our meeting. Our meeting was on the 19th of February. In the meantime, but it was actually before our meeting, the Commission has published this communication, which is called The Road to the Next Multiannual Financial Framework, which is still very vague, but it stresses those elements of competitiveness. And there's a very strong statement that status quo is not an option. So the Commission themselves says, we're not going to continue EU funding approaches that we were using before, or until now, which we're still using. Then there was a published consultation which was launched immediately afterwards, and it finished on the 7th of May. There was quite a strong response. There were over 2,500 responses, and there was also a lot of positions prepared in response to that consultation. One of them, for example, a common civil society position arguing for a minimum 50% of the total EU budget should focus on sustainability, climate, and environment. So this would be like a completely different perspective from what the Commission seems to be talking about in its communication. Then there was a document produced by the European Parliament on the Parliament's priorities for the next period, with again some strong statements, like, for example, that single national plan approach is not a solution, and the mega funds merging existing programs are not fit for purpose. Again, the European Parliament seems to be very strongly saying no to some of the informally communicated ideas of the European Commission. And then what we can expect is the Commission's proposals coming out in about mid-July 2025. So this is what I wanted to do by way of introducing the discussion. And then I would think, hand over directly to Seraphine, who would then move on as to which voices can be heard in the debate.
Thank you, Ursula. Indeed, now we'll do a bit of transition because I think we have a few authorized voices as well speaking today. So I'll do the transition between the general presentation, adding a bit more granularity to the issues you raise. Thank you for inviting me again. It's a pleasure to be here with some friends, so many friends. And as I say, we'll introduce a number of questions that I'm sure I know for sure because we have met even recently in a different feature. The presidents of LR and the Rural Park Coordination Group could actually, and the Committee of the Region, member Committee of the Regions can actually present also more detail what I'm just going to introduce. I also take the chance because we are among people who are knowledgeable on the topic. I will also try to issue some ideas about what can be done. This is just for discussion, for debate, for provocation if you want, but maybe just perhaps to stimulate the ideas for today and further on. Let me see, my screen allows it. Yeah, apparently for once, yes. Kind of quite of a miracle. So, well, okay. For starters, ADL, you know what is ADL? It's a voluntary organization, NGO. We do a lot of activities, including the Rural Pact. Some of the colleagues are involved on that. I'm involved in research policy on Horizon projects on research, and we have contributed to the recent consultation on MFF. This is, of course, in a personal capacity, but inevitably I'm basing on the materials that have been developed with about 300 partners all over Europe in these various research projects that you see below there and which we contributed recently to this public consultation. Straight on, I'm going to start with something that is for many people a painful memory, but I think it's important to start with that because, like it or not, the people in the EU bubble that don't like or are skeptical about local development have these arguments very much in mind. It is true that the European Court of Auditors is not the first time it says that. In 2009 said a similar thing. And essentially, as you know, all of you, I'm pretty sure, know about that famous study, which everybody has been talking about without actually mentioning it for the last 3 years. Those are arguments that inevitable, any advocate or any policymaker, any policy analyst, any practitioner involved in local development needs to be able to address. Some of that might be fair, some of that might be exaggerated, this analysis, but that's definitely a good picture of the perception of those who are not that keen on local development or just simply say, look, with Russia, China, loss to competitiveness of the German car industry, misinformation, and the rule of law, the last thing we need is to also invest a lot of money into very micro local development things that could be better done by the member states or the regions. So that's something that we need to address, and that's something that we shouldn't always lose from our perspective. So over the last 3 years, we've been talking about this report in different ways. Some of them are represented here, and trying to articulate that in a local development and leading in particular, but local development in general, in a positive way. Some of those actors are here today, so I will let them to provide the details of their views from the LR, from the Committee of the Regions, from the Rural Pact. We'll also cover a number of ideas that have come up in the last few months in terms of views from stakeholders, institutions, Committee of the Regions, European Social Committee, and of course the European Parliament, of which I had the pleasure to contribute to some of the reports that are being presented like a few weeks ago. Incidentally, I was in the budget conference a few days ago with the rapporteur from the Committee of the Regions in the EU budget. As you know, if you know Brussels, you know that Madame von der Leyen is very rare to come in person to a meeting just across the street from where her office is. She was on this, and for some reason I was sitting next to her for 10 minutes. That's rather even more unusual in my experience. So that tells you that there's going to be a big topic of the year, of the political year in the EU and beyond. And she made some announcements that I will comment there for debate later. Of course, I will not stop into this because you know these other visions and the other context that I mentioned earlier, so I will not get into that. So let me go straight to the positions. This is a summary of a lot of the positions that I put you the pictures earlier. And I believe that outside the institutions, the view is rather consistent, which tends to be positive to change, but skeptical about an excessive radical change, as Madame von der Leyen's plans, official and leaked, seem to suggest. However, I think the President of the Commission, and this is a commission very much directed from the top, it's a very political commission, even more than the Juncker Commission, so she's also amenable to understand political realities. And therefore, in last week, last week, Madame von der Leyen said that, confirmed what Piotr Serafin, nothing to do with me, I'm afraid, Commissioner of the Budget, about could be regional plans and not just national single plans. And she insisted very clearly, for those who wanted to hear, including people like from my sector, who says that the European Competitiveness Fund, which is this big slush fund, this big bazooka, that following this recommendation from Draghi and Letta, she is keen to have, which is essentially merging all the direct management funds of the Commission into a single fund, to make sure that the Commission has as much political leeway to react to crisis, to reprogram things. That will still stay, but Horizon Europe, given the strong vocal opposition to a separate to integration Horizon Europe, that will be kept separate. This is also important for local development because there's about I think 100 million euros on experimental local development, which I'll cover later, devoted to Horizon. So it's not just a cohesion policy relevant for local development or EFRD for that matter. However, having said that, what Madame von der Leyen is saying is that there might be regional single plans if the member states allows. At the moment, already happens with the Next Generation EU. In Spain, half of the expenditure is regionalized. Why? For political realities and limited capacity from the center. Whereas in Germany and Austria, which are by federal state by the book, is much more centralized. So that's something that still happens as a degree of centralization and very much to the discretion of whoever governs a given country in 2027. And the same with the separate identity of the separation of the various funds, including Horizon Europe and so on. It is very likely that the funds will exist on paper. The question is who will take the root of decisions, how much leeway the Commission will have to reprogram things, be that the shared management funds, be that this European competitiveness funds plus Horizon Europe. Because if they are separate funds, but the Commission has the ultimate ability, alleging emergency reasons to make changes, essentially means that they are a single fund, in case of the competitiveness fund, or a single plan in the case of the shared management fund. So very much depends what is the footnotes and the back wires of this new regulatory framework. One understanding is there will be proposals, I think the 8th of July, follow on the budget itself, and then there's going to be a common regulation, I think around the 14th. Don't quote me on this because that's an understanding. And then only the regulations, fund-specific regulations, will only come in October, more or less. And that's why we need to keep our eyes focused. However, on the rest, it is quite clear it will be very difficult for the Commission to climb down on other things like results-based management linked to structural reforms, payment not linked to cost. This is going to happen. So the question is how we can position ourselves as local development practitioners. One thing that, and I starting to finish are getting to the end. One thing that is likely to happen is going to be a consultation on instruments, which is not a bad thing because depending how you count, we have between 12 and 50 instruments for local development. And that's even for us difficult to fathom. Some of that is because of the policy implementation, things were invented and they were added to the policy mix. So having consolidation is not a bad thing, depending on, of course, who eventually takes the decision. The fact that the Commission at the moment only has 4% of the MFF that it can discretionarily change without much consultation to the Parliament and the Council, it is clearly not enough. And we will see a push from the Commission, highly resisted by the Parliament and the Council, to have leeway in terms of increase their own autonomy to change the budget as it sees fit, depending on the circumstances. I believe, however, and that's a strong indication from all sides, formal and informal, that local development and leader will stay the same way that the Rural Action Plan and Rural Pact has been confirmed, the Rural Vision. It's interesting because the Vision for Agriculture and Food had a section of non-farming rural development that shouldn't be there because technically it was just about farming. So that tells you that they are aware of the political realities that you basically dismantle a whole part of CAP, what is now CAP, and either give it away automatically to other part of the Commission or simply mainstream that make it disappear, will not politically be viable. So again, the question will be what shape that each initiative will take. And in that, I would like to complement with a consultation that only finished yesterday, I believe, or the day before, which I contributed with many more colleagues, this agenda for cities, which if you look at the if you look at the text, it's very conciliatory. It talks about small towns, talk about middle size, talk about functional areas. However, the suspicion is in the bubble in Brussels that is about the agenda for the big cities. So that's something that, while thinking about the future of rural development, we shouldn't be actually lose track of this wider picture, because definitely the agenda for cities is something that Commissioner Fito, which is in a way the political boss of the farming, the agriculture commissioner, that is a big priority for him for a number of reasons. Not very clear why it is the focus, because we already got an urban agenda. So why we have a new agenda for cities? And that's something that, in addition to issues like new priorities for housing and so on, we should be not lose track of. This is the calendar that, if you are a practitioner like me, we will have essentially 9 months between October, June of advocating changes to the proposals. After that is basically a long game, because that's just basically the big players. So if you got ideas, now that the consultation is over, keep them in storage. I know people is making a bit proposals now after the consultation. Doesn't make any sense. Keep them your powder dry, because as soon as the proposals are on in July, you need to start making advocacy, because the Parliament will start appointing rapporteurs and COR, a social committee, in September, and then the ball games start for between October or so and July next year. So just a final 4 questions or 4 ideas for suggestions. So as I say, many people will be keen to come up with reinventing the wheel. My advice, and the advice I will be giving if I was still working for a regional president or for a mayor, as I was for most of my life, that's not the time for making big proposals. The proposal is going to be set by Mrs. von der Leyen. Like it or not, it's going to happen like that. So focus on basically talking with your finance ministry, talking with the secretaries of the commission, talking with that part of the commission, the DG reform, or SG reform as it's called now, and not only with DG Agri, DG Regio. This is, by the way, the advice that the very top of the DG Agri, DG Regio is telling us, everybody. So, I think if they're telling that, I think that's good advice to follow. And try to make your proposals very focused. Very precise and very focused. Don't try to change a new initiative or something. It's far too late for that. And I know some people is going to push for that. Try to do something simple, like 8% year mark for local development in the single plans. The more so, as you know, there is more money spent in rural areas in cohesion than in rural development, in agriculture, in CAP. So, that's nothing. The other thing that they are a bit nerdy, but I think very important, is basically, if you want to keep leader, for instance, change the rules. We have rules already, for instance, in Horizon Europe, which devotes a lot of money for projects like LEADER, and the financial management is much simpler than the ones that people doing local action groups have at the moment. So, look at that. Happy to provide more advice on that, because we have a lot of material on that. And that will basically enhance the efficacy of local development tools like LEADER, but also the legitimacy towards those skepticals against local government or local development that exist. Finally, we need to reposition local development in a different guise. And that is something that, if you look at the functional area debate that we have a lot in the European Union, and you look at the LACs, many LACs are more or less like functional areas. So that's something that, it's an argument that I would very much recommend people to advocate a bit more than we are doing at the moment, which is just taking LACs as a separate thing. No, think LACs as a functional area. And why? Because then, in case you can reposition LACs to provide services, to provide rural proofing, to act as rural proofing labs, and also act as an alternative to the dismantling of basic services in many parts of Europe. Another thing, and maybe it's a hobby horse for me, but I was behind what is now the only definition, what's the territorial decline in the EU, which is in the ERDF regulation. And after a lot of lobbying, we managed to get it there, but it basically became so deformed that nobody's using it. But the Commission, in the 9th cohesion report and in the demographic toolbox, came up with this definition. Nobody asked them, and whereas they actually put this definition in that. So I would very much advocate to have that definition in the new national single plan regulation, whatever it's going to call it, because that will help target funds to the areas that are in most need in Europe, as you can see that in this map. And very much happy to talk with those who like to discuss that thing further. So, just to simplify, don't just talk with the Agri, the Regio, with the Regio Committee, with the COTER. of course, continue talking to them, but talk with your Ministry of Finance, talk with the SecGem, focus that you have a very narrow between October and June 2026, sorry. Ask for a clear, very simple set of proposals, like a horizontal earmark on the national single plans. Use rules that we have already in the EU toolbox, like the Horizon Europe rules to simplify financial management, and reposition local development structure into the current issues of debate, like functional areas, capacity buildings, or, as I say, support the new definition for the population. I hope it was not too long and gave some food for thought for the intense months we got in the future. If you want to discuss with us further, and you cannot wait for the next LDnet meeting, we tend to organize also the ELIF in ADL, where we do these sort of discussions as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Serafin. I hope you have given us a huge amount of food for thought, and also something to react to and explore further in the discussion today, and maybe on future occasions indeed. And that I think on behalf of LDnet, we're happy to continue that discussion also with ADL, our partner organization, and with others. Okay, I think the next speaker is already, hopefully, Radim, you're with us. You've joined us. Is ready to speak, and you would like me probably to share your presentation. Is that right? And Radim is. I introduced you before you joined, but I think I haven't actually said anything about the declaration, so I think it would be interesting for you to just make that link now. I will make it a full screen, and this is the first slide. Can you see the first slide now? Rural Pact building blocks.
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, great.
So good afternoon to everybody from Leaderfest, which is a big fair of local action groups, of 300 participants from the local action groups and 100 participants from 6 ministries and payment agencies in the city of Tábor, which is actually a pilot city where we are piloting CLLD in the cities, in urban. So sorry for coming 4 minutes later, because we have been discussing actually the issues we are discussing also today. Thanks a lot for the previous presentation. I think I always, on the European level, in the Committee of the Regions, etc., I always see kind of panic, and hysteria from the proposals which came, But on the other hand, as it was mentioned, I see a big potential and challenge in that, and I don't think that it's killing local development. Although, of course, there are risks. Me being a Deputy Minister of Regional Development, I always try to stress out that we have local development, not rural, urban, outermost, islands, It seems to me that we are too much looking for differences, although even rural areas are very different, even in the Czech Republic and even across Europe, that it's more important to speak about local development and about functional areas, because I think this is crucial, and also for the future, the linkages between urban and rural areas are crucial. So I will also try to focus in my intervention to this, because I was asked for that, not just to speak about rural, but more about local and those things. My experience is what leaks out from the Commission in this way is too much extent truth, So I am building on this, And of course, single fund changed to single plan. Now it's called single partnership plan, or I don't know. So it's a little bit changing, but I think the what's said in that, is actually done. And of course, comparing it to the RRF mechanism, which we know that the president of the Commission loves, that, we have to somehow think in between the lines what will be the proposal and how the policy will be. And it doesn't depend if the agricultural ministers in the bubble say that they all want to keep the 2 pillars, and cohesion ministers say something, etc., because I think we need to have a discussion between the different blocks. What actually is important also to mention is that we are too much maybe like Europe now looking for competitiveness and to compete with US and China, you know. But on the other hand, what I feel, what is the biggest comparative advantage of Europe is the quality of life. Because if you compare the quality of life, for example, in rural areas in Europe, in US, in China, it's incomparable, you know. And I always use the example of the US policy of smart shrinking in rural areas, that the patient is in hospital, you know, dying, and they are keeping him alive, you know, once he disappears. And I would like to stress out that in the Committee of the Regions, which I'm a proud member of, we already have studies on non-rurality which say that the costs for people living in rural areas, if we do not support the rural areas, are much more expensive finally than what we are giving to rural areas. And finally, what I think is cohesion policy is a glue of the European integration. It's one of the pillars and used to be always the pillar. And I think that even though we have new challenges now, we need always to think about the cohesion policy as the main glue. And it's also the opinion of the Committee of the Regions, which we always try to stress out. And the cohesion, as a part of cohesion, I take any kind of area which needs it, you know, because the goal is, you know, to not that the decisions are opening, but that we are trying to make the level of development of different regions of Europe. And of course, it's not cost effective, but you know, it brings the cohesion of Europe and of course then the advantages from the single market, etc. Now coming to the Rule Pact Coordination Group, which is actually the coordination group which was created as one of the instruments to deliver the long-term vision for rural areas. You know, this vision is amazing. If we fulfill it by 2040, everyone would love to live in rural areas. It will be a true paradise. But what I miss as a proud rural citizen, I really live in a rural area. I am for 15 years a mayor of a small rural municipality 250 kilometers from Prague, is the concrete steps, you know, how to deliver this strategy, how to fulfill this vision. Because it's nice to have visions, but you need to deliver those visions. And this is something what I'm missing: concrete steps, policies, but also monitoring, which is also crucial to monitor and to have the different steps, like, for example, delivering SDGs or delivering different kinds of policies. We have territorial impact assessment, which is a very good instrument, but we don't have rural proofing, you know, like we have it as a term, but we don't have the methodology, clear methodology. So it's something which is missing. So it was created, this Rule Pact Coordination Group, which is one of the 3 blocks actually, which is created to deliver the Rule Pact and long-term vision for rural areas. Actually, one first block, important one, is the Rule Pact Support Office, actually, which is Ursula is a very important part of, and other people who are really doing the best to make everything, you know, for the Rule Pact Coordination Group and the Rule Pact to work. Second one is Rule Pact Community Platform, where everyone could sign for that, and I hope all of you participating today can sign for it and also make commitments. And finally, there is the Rule Pact Coordination Group, which is the body which was created in June 2023. And actually, this is kind of structured representation of different kinds of stakeholders on the European level. There are representatives of the European Parliament, presidencies, Commission. There are representatives of the Committee of the European Committee of the Regions, European Economic and Social Committee, and also the main stakeholders coming from rural areas, including tourism, local action groups, mountainous areas, and youth and other institutions. There is actually the 3-year mandate. Maybe you can skip to the next slide. Yes. So you can see that it's really, according to my opinion, the balance of the representation is really very good. And what we miss a little bit is the real power and possibilities of influence of this body, because it's really going across the most important stakeholders from the publics, private and the civil sector, and also, of course, academic field, which I have not mentioned. We can go further. No, and so one of the first steps we have done is, first of all, of course, kind of information campaign, because even if I go to different meetings in the Czech Parliament and the ministries and even to the stakeholders, so if you speak about the rule pact, almost nobody knows what it is, so this is the big mission of us to spread the information and this tool and ask the people to actually commit to the rule act and sign for the rule pact. And second was the declaration, which we tried to prepare across all different stakeholders to give the one strong voice for rural areas. What my experience dealing with the rural development and regional development already for 14 years is that, we are not able, especially in rural areas, to put together for one strong voice, and to really pinpoint the priorities, we have, because everyone has its own interests. And if I compare it to the cities, which was now mentioned, in your cities, for example, the farmers, of course, although they are big, small, but if they decide they go with the tractors to Brussels and they change the European policy completely, So this is something which we miss. And this was actually the goal, to have a one strong common voice, and putting up the main priorities we have. And not speaking just about rural areas, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think thinking in the box, we are still having many of us, is not a good way. Actually, in the Czech Republic, we transferred rural development from the Ministry of Agriculture to the Ministry of Regional Development already 10 years ago, and everyone is happy about it, even the representatives of rural areas, So this is something that we have to approach things in a different way. And this is something which we call for, and it's really the holistic approach, because we cannot face the challenges of local development with the sectoral approach, that different sectors are giving different contributions, different grants, And finally, it's even cost effective. We have a study of a Czech famous economist who was focusing on actually multi-fund CLLD, and it's cost effective because the synergies between funds are naturally cost effective if you use those instruments and not having interventions from different ministries. And this is something what I feel, and as Serafin mentioned it, from the single plan, I think it overcomes the holistic, it overcomes the sectoral approach of different ministries, different DGs. Actually, it's even worse maybe on the European level than for example, in the Czech Republic with this kind of sectoral approach. So this holistic approach is really crucial. And secondly, it's important to stress out the place-based approaches because, we have a lot of data now, we can work with the data. We have amazing data, from different fields. And we really have to prepare the place-based approaches and the tailor-made solutions, because every region needs something different. And actually, as Ursula mentioned, there are different kinds of instruments. There is CLLD, there is ITI, there is just transition, for example, mechanism. Also, we shouldn't forget about cross-border cooperation, and we are fully using those instruments in the Czech Republic, and I think it delivers the results. And also, when we have the evaluation of the period 2040 to 2020, it brings that, just those integrated instruments bring the cohesion, not other interventions, So I think this is something what we should build on. And they are all the time calling, from the European level. So I like the idea of single regional plans, of course, it's good. And I also like the idea of earmarking. But for me, 8% of local development, that's what we have in the Czech Republic just for CLLD, So for me, 20, 30, 40% is the figure we are thinking about in the Czech Republic to be a part of single plan, to go through the integrated instruments. Because even in this moment, we are using 25% of all the funds through integrated instruments in the Czech Republic. So 8% is not much, according to my opinion. But of course, it's about a discussion, all of us, and what's important is also that this decision will probably to much extent lie on the national level, and I think it's very important also for the stakeholder organization on the European level to be prepared for this discussion, and to bring the arguments, from this. Maybe we can go to next slide. This is something, what are our possibilities, what we can do with this declaration. It's, of course, very difficult to get to different institutions and commissioners, etc. with that. And also, it's very difficult to persuade the different stakeholders that really in this moment, it's worth to have the common, single, important voice together. And of course, in the later terms, we can discuss about the details for tourism, for mountainous areas, for CLD. But in this moment, we need to really build on those basic principles which support the local development. And final slide, actually, just to mention, we are really having a strong support for the local development and integrated instruments in the Czech Republic. Just recently, we organized a conference on CLD. There were 3 ministers participating, not just coming to say hello in the beginning, but really participating for 2-3 hours. There were a lot of, even people, civil servants from the ministries not dealing with European funds, but from those departments which are dealing with the thematic things, for example, especially from the Ministry of Social Affairs, which was organizing it this time. And this is important to persuade the people who are dealing with the thematic things, that those tools are working perfectly to overcome them. So there are outcomes we would like to stress out also to the European level. We brought also invited one representative from DG Employment, which was for the first time she was in such an event and heard about CLLD that much, So it's important also on board of the Rural Pact, coordination group to bring not just people from DG Agri and DG Regio, but also from other DGs. And we very feel that those really place-based solutions really work for the local development. And final slide, there is also something which is also actually included in the declaration of the Rural Pact Coordination Group, and that's something what is really important. And I know that the centralization is easier, and it seems to me that even discussion at the European level in this moment is the centralization approach, but on the other hand, it doesn't work. The centralization doesn't work for the local development and for the cohesion policy, and we should realize it. And one of the biggest priorities of Europe is subsidiarity, which is not going actually in the same direction with some of the proposals we are listening to. So that was my perspective, and I'm looking for the discussion with you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Radim. That was condensed a whole lot of issues into a short period of time. Thank you very much for discipline and for the presentation, and the thoughts that will provoke our discussion. And then to complement that, because although you were, of course, talking about all kinds of areas very often, but coming very much from the rural angle, we also have Piotr, who's coming from the rural angle, but he's talking about local development, bottom-up local development in all areas, about LEADER and CLLD, and the organization ELARD, of which he's the president, has recently launched some activities, again, in view of the future EU funding streams. Piotr, if you're ready, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation, and I should thank Radim, because his speech was very, very grateful, and I'm a little worried what to say more. So I will focus on our petition, and I will try to share my presentation. Okay, I hope that you see it.
Yep.
And I have to check if I can change slides. Okay, I have some problems. Not. Okay, I will try it again.
Unless you want, I can still share your presentation if needed.
Okay, it's moving. Okay, so First of all, I want to say about priorities which we have which have European Commission, and for us as a local action groups, two are very important. First is saying about equal opportunities for all citizens. For us, it means not only for urban citizens, but for rural citizens too. And it is why we think that CLD should be wider used in next period. Second priority is is saying about protecting democracy and the European values. For us, it is about CLD. If we think how to empower citizens to actively participate in democratic life, we think that we should give people to have influence for choosing priorities for which we use European funds and national funds. So for us, we have these two priorities, and we very long considered how to ensure policymakers that the leader should be stronger in next period. Unfortunately, we cannot act as farmers who, as you know, and it was last summer, could block roads and protest to show their their okay, I forgot for what. To show that they were afraid about future. So we proposed and decided at the beginning of this year to launch a petition. And again, problems with okay, to launch petition to European Commission to call them to make participatory rural development tools mandatory across all EU member states in next period, ensuring that the leader remains a core pillar. I have a problem with presentation. Sorry. A core pillar of EU territorial policies, integrate leader CLD into multiple EU policies and protect its budgetary allocation with earmarking, including the common agriculture policy and cohesion policy. I hope that you see it.
No, at the moment, I don't think we see anything. If you want, I can very quickly. This is just one last slide, or the last two slides.
Yes. Okay.
The last slide.
And now?
Okay. Ah, yes. Now we can see it.
Okay. And strengthen and recognize the role of local action group as a key facilitator. Facilitators of EU, yes, facilitators of EU policies at the local level, and as a key stakeholders in preventing and fighting disinformation, making them recognized partners in governance and European integration efforts. Simplify access to funding by reducing administrative burdens and ensuring multi-fund mechanisms support the efficient community-led initiatives, along with the EU commitment to reducing red tape from member states and enhancing local governance capacity, increasing funding for leaders LD at a level that matches its proven impact and expanded role in tackling rural challenges. As you can see on the left right corner, you have a QR code to our petition, and if you want to support us, you can sign it now. Of course, I can share a link to the petition in a chat after my presentations. And I hope that we collect enough signature to prove that rural development CLD leader should be during next period. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peter and Piotr. And then I hand over directly to Peter for the discussion, because I think we are a little bit pressed for time, but I think there's still enough scope for a good exchange. So, Peter,
Okay.
over to you.
Thanks very much, Ursula, and thank you to our three is it three speakers or four speakers? Three speakers, who were all very excellent and also all very positive. And it was very good to hear such an optimistic point of view. So thank you to the speakers. Before we get to the audience, and do remember to use the chat. If you want to ask a question, mention that you want to ask a question in the chat, and then we'll come and ask you to ask it, if that's not too convoluted. But do so if you have, and it doesn't have to be a question, it can also be a statement or a position at this point in our discussions. I particularly, I was very positive about this in the Rural Pact, the idea of the multi-policy, multi-stakeholder, and there was multi-something else as well. Multi-fund, multi-policy, and multi-stakeholder. I think that should be almost
multi-level.
Yes, although I didn't write that down, so I'm obviously not doing very well today. But the I thought that summarized really the contribution that local development makes in the local area, in a way, tying all these multis together. But also I found Seraphine's contribution very positive, because it was very concrete. Keep your powder dry, keep your proposals simple, and so on. And this made it very concrete what we need to do. And avoid baffling them with our own internal complexity, but ask for simple things like asking for 8%. And I particularly like the Czechs, Radim, saying that they want 30%. And I think this is a bit like a transitional demand in the Soviet Union in 1920. But yes, 30% would be excellent. So anyway. Before I bring in the audience, do you as the speakers have any questions for each other? First of all, do you have anything that you thought struck you from each other's contributions? And I know you were all listening very attentively, or anything that you didn't say that you would like to add to what you have already said. I saw Radim switching himself on, so yeah, Radim, you go for it.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing. I think this was excellent summary, taking the main points from half an hour of presentations. And what I very much agree with Serafin is that we need to be simple, concrete, and bring the concrete proposals. I have met cabinets of Hansen and Fito in last weeks, and it doesn't work if you say all those phrases, it should be holistic, we shouldn't forget, no one left behind, right to stay, right to return, but they ask, but what are the concrete things, what we can do? And I think this should be something which is very important indeed in the next months, for bringing for the lobby. And the more concrete and the more simple we are in the demands, the more successful we will be. I'm sure about it.
Thank you, Radim. Any other contributions, Serafin or Piotr or Radim? Sorry, that was Radim. Any other country, or Ursula yourself? I also thought the declaration was very concrete as well, and it makes it very clear. Streamlined funding, resourcing community-led and place-based. It uses the word holistic, but I think we allowed it once. And one thing that LDnet has also been playing a part in and would like to see more of is around capacity building for local actors. I think this is very important because it isn't just about the amount of money, it's about how well we spend it. And without capacity building, I don't think we can really get there. Okay, I'm going to turn to the chat now, and do add more questions as we go through. But we had a question from Pedro Fernandez from Spain. Pedro, do you want to ask your question yourself, or do you want me to ask it? Ask it yourself if you're still there. You'll need to
please.
Okay. Are you there?
Yes. You can
Go.
make the question if they want. Oh, okay. If you want, I do myself.
Yeah.
It's a question for Serafin. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation, Serafin. Very clear. The question I want to make you is, what are the effective steps, really effective steps, can we take from LACs and rural networks to ensure leader continues in the next financial work with a minimal budget? Thank you, Serafin.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you. Let me tie it up with a bit of a commentary on the presentation of Piotr and Radim, because then I tie something together. Look, local development community, it doesn't have tractors, but there's a lot of people across Europe, and there is a lot of places very much ingrained in the local, regional, and even national ecosystem. So don't underestimate as well, I wouldn't say the power, but definitely the weight you can do. So one first advice, just starting to answer the question for Pedro. Look, take the LR declaration, sign it, disseminate it, make it to the local press, share it with your local leaders. Do the same with the Rural Pact. The Rural Pact is also, because it covers a wider constituency, also covers the European Parliament, because it covers a wider set of people, and it's in a way halfway between the civil society and the Commission. So make use of those opportunities as much as you can. The more numbers that there are there, the much easier and the much more sensible. Mr. Fito is a very pragmatic person, as Radim mentioned. So, he needs to see that there is beef and there is mobilization. Then, if you allow me, colleagues, on responding to the question on a very Spanish context, because it's just as a way of example, as Pedro is from there. If I were in Spain, I will, again, make very simple requests to the Ministry of Finance and your regional finance ministries, because in Spain is a multi-level country, and that's not unique in Europe. Maybe the 4 or 5 questions that I suggested, maybe others, but something very specific they can actually put and defend, or at least disagree with, because there's something that, they cannot escape. And use, as I say, the granularity you got in the territory, which is not minor, because you got mayors, you got members of provincial councils, you got people also in the regional administrations, and try to make sure these calls, these very simple messages heard. Nothing complicated, just 4 or 5 things, maybe the ones I suggested, maybe others, but something very, very simple. And very much in line with these declarations that LR in this case and Rural Pact has provided. Also, and just to finalize, in order to address the question, particularly finance, because the question here is going to be the finance ministries, regional or national, and then the Secretary General of the Commission. These are the players at the moment, really. And therefore, to go against their skepticism and say, look, in the case of Spain, we have 8,000 municipalities. Most of them are unable to provide services. Why don't we use structures that already exist, the local action groups, to provide some of these basic services? Because unlike in Belgium or in France, where or in Germany, where small municipalities are required by law to tie together and provide services. In Spain, politically and legally is a mess, whereas the lags already exist in the territory. So basically, you are helping yourself by actually highlighting the added value of leader or lags in this case beyond the traditional lag activities. You're also solving a problem that the finance ministry has, which is how the hell we actually manage a territory with 8,000 municipalities. So, this is just trying to actually just go through the way of others. And that's something that I believe the lags, because many countries have like 20, 30 years of experience, have, if it provide the right support, provide the right resources, can actually do. And I'll leave it there. I think it's a Spanish example, but I think it's pretty compatible with lessons we can actually draw in other countries. Thank you.
Okay, but it also illustrates perhaps the need for different solutions in different places. I can imagine the Nordic countries would find it very strange that certainly the basic services would be delivered through lags, but this is this reflects the range of and variety in Europe. Martin Matko has a question.
Yes.
Ursula, you want to say something?
No,
Sorry,
I just wanted to
hand.
actually, sorry, I was going to bring to your attention Martin's question, but also comment on something you said earlier, because it ties nicely with what Martin is asking about. You said at a certain point that we as LDnet are paying attention to capacity building at the local level for local actors. I'm not necessarily in agreement with that. I think we're talking about capacity building at all levels, and maybe even especially at the managing authority level and at national policy level. And that I think that ties in very nicely with what Martin is saying, that the territorial tools are good, they are an enabling framework, but they work best when the national policy is built on the partnership principle, which is not always the case. So while you're supporting the territorial angle, don't forget to look at how the national policies are structured and try to improve that as well. And then I hand over to Martin, sorry.
Well, just a sec, just on that, I was actually using the wording from the declaration which said capacity building for local actors. But I think what you're saying is something much richer, which is that we need multi-level capacity building, because we need, especially for the intermediate bodies or the implementing agencies, however they're defined in different programs. That's often where there are some major implementation difficulties, and we need to therefore work with both the local actors and the people who are doling out the money at the same time. Martin, nice to see you. Do you want to make your point yourself and ask it of who you wish?
Well, I'm kind of conscious of the time, so I didn't want to rob.
No, go on. We've got time.
I just wanted to, well, first of all, thanks for organizing these set of webinars. It's really interesting to follow, and also for today's interventions. I just picked up on some of the points made by the speakers. Actually, on this, who gets to decide is really what's important. I worked in DG Regio when in the territorial and urban unit, when we were basically doing the first round of ITIs and urban CLLDs. It was such a varied picture, because you could see that some countries had long-standing policies, like the Sozialstaat in Germany, which were very difficult to tug under the framework that was meant to nudge, let's say, countries which had not yet maybe, let's say, matured to an extent to have a very strong dialogue between levels of government. And actually, I'm being a bit provocative today, because I also worked at Eurocities, and now I work for the Norwegian EA Norway grants. And sometimes those that you represent also don't, they don't give the best example of being advocates of the partnership principle at their level. So I think it's really important that also municipalities, be they rural or urban, they also practice the partnership principle within their administrations and work with stakeholders that have that are affected by decisions, and it comes really from the lowest level up. But I was really happy about the intervention from the Czech Republic, because I think it really shows that you can do it. It's possible to do multi-fund CLLD. basically using all the funds under the CPR, if there is a determination to use this as a local development tool. And I think there are a few countries that actually made use of the full spectrum of the funds and the tools to forward some regional policy objectives, but it is possible to do if you have the right architecture in the country to do this policy or take it seriously, is what I find.
All right, thank you very much, Martin. I really take your point about, we used to always say that subsidiarity only really applies, it always goes down to the level you're at, but never below you.
Exactly.
So, member states think it applies to them, but not to their regions. The regions think it applies to them, but not to their cities or rural areas, and so on. It probably even applies in lags. But I think your idea of the partnership principle is very important. And if we look just for a moment, we've had a lot of discussion on the rural areas, but if we just take a quick snapshot at the urban areas, basically we have a sort of big brother, little brother situation between ITI and CLLD, where ITI and that priority, which is now priority 11, are very much dominant in financial terms compared to the amount being spent in CLLD, and also the number of countries concerned. And we don't see such a deep participative approach taking place in ITI and Article 11 as we would expect to and have to see within CLLD. And I think this is a major issue with the whole integrated urban sustainable development approach. Okay. I don't see any other.
Yes, there is
See
Radim.
Enrique,
There is Radim with his hand raised, and Enrique in the chat.
And just before I let Radim in, we also notice on the urban side that there is to be some urban CLLD. I think 6 test pilot towns and cities in the Czech Republic. So this is very, very welcome as well, joining the club of about 8 countries using urban CLLD. Radim, over to you, and then I'm going to ask Enrique in.
Okay, just a short reaction to Martin and Pedro. And maybe also we are just going around all the time. Maybe I am the only politician being here, although I always feel more as an expert than a politician. But, of course, the political will and the trust is crucial for pushing those instruments, because there are no clear arguments, other arguments. We have multi-fund CLLD using 5 operational programs, from in the Czech Republic, free funds. And the LUX started maybe as almost the first ones in Europe, being approved, and they are all already, and it's very, we have a very good cooperation, which is not too big, because every program is different. So this unity in diversity is actually crucial. And it works, so there are no excuses. There is just the only thing to have a trust and will, And I think this is important also to reply to Pedro, the key members of the local action groups are the public authorities, the municipalities, They are not, sometimes I feel that politicians are destroying Leader, and that's not true in the Czech Republic, actually, because they found out that it's the best instrument and it's better to cooperate together. It's also thanks that we have 6,258 municipalities in the Czech Republic. 90% of them are below 1,000, and they need to cooperate, So that's one of the things. And they need to cooperate also with other stakeholders because they see that it's benefiting. And we have very strong, actually, history of civil societies like voluntary fire brigades, sports clubs, etc. So in those municipalities. So I think the only thing and the biggest obstacle is to persuade on the national level the politicians and the civil servants. Those are 2 big categories. But we did it. This game 10 years ago. I was for 10 years vice chairman of the local governments association, being on the other side of the barricade. Lobbying, being a president of LR, and you can persuade them, and when they see that that it's good for them because they can deliver to many areas, and it's really think globally, act locally, giving some kind of power and subsidiarity. So it works. And now we are having elections in the autumn, and I think nobody is afraid of the support of leaders, CLLD in the future, even if the government changes, because this is something which is taken as granted, that it's a good tool. And we are now using, for example, local action groups are for the key for us players for after flood reconstruction, last year, because they are one-stop shops in the areas, which were flooded. So we give them automatically new roles, and not just implementing the money, but giving them a role which we need to animate in the rural areas and now also in the cities. And I very much agree with ITI not having such a partnership principle. We are always trying with methodologies to push them even in the Czech Republic. And our pilot is in 7 cities, including Prague, actually. One part of Prague is a part of it. And we want to show to the cities that it's good if, as a part of ITI, they have allocation for CLRD in cities. That it's putting together. And finally, we always try to learn the stakeholders organizations. We have 4 biggest regional partners: Association of Cities, Association of Local Governments, Association of LACs, and Association of Regions, that if they cooperate, it's much better for them finally than if they compete. Because if they found common position on the future, they will get much more altogether than if they compete between themselves, And I think this is a quite clear and quite wise strategy, because our ministry is the one which will always support them, But if they quarrel in front of other ministries, they would lose, And this is something, which is very important to realize. It's a big picture. It's local development, and we shouldn't compete for the money for anything, We should cooperate.
Okay, thank you very much, Radim. I love the idea of you being on both sides of the barricades. I've realized that Enrique, he says his microphone is not working. So he talked here in his question about the importance of capacity building for managing authorities, particularly those in the implementation of ITIs, to boost them in rural areas. And I think he's talking here about the sort of rural-urban fringe of the functional areas. And that there seems to be a problem of very low take-up of, presumably, of finance and of projects in those types of areas. And I think also you perhaps tend to see, because of the way that ITI is administered, where the lead city is normally also the intermediate body in many countries. For example, in Croatia or Poland, I think that's the case. Then the risk is that they slightly hold a bit of a power to host the bigger projects within the core city rather than in the more rural parts. But I think that's clearly a good issue to raise, which is how in a way the decision making takes place within ITIs so that the smaller municipalities get a proper say in what's going on. I know, for example, in the Czech Republic, Brno has something like 39 municipalities within its ITI area, and I'm sure that others must be equally large. I think his second question, which is the idea of simplifying LEADER, applying the EU rules that apply to Horizon projects, which are so much simpler than those applied in the member states. Of course, this is because of shared management. It's much easier for the Commission to run things when they run it themselves, which they do in a sense, within the Horizon program, rather than when they're sharing power with the member states, who have to be kept on a short leash, or maybe a chain would be more appropriate. And this is the problem with, but equally, it's never going to happen, Enrique. So recommissionifying it's a bit like going back to the community initiatives. It's just not going to happen. We're against the tide of history on that one. I think we're running out of time. So I'm going to hand back, unless there are any other quick comments, either from our panel.
Maybe just a very, very quick clarification question from Joanna, who's completely right to say that we owe to our audience not to be using, too many acronyms. And ITI, which I mentioned at the beginning, Integrated Territorial Investment, is another tool that the European Commission has put in the power of member states. Sorry.
Okay, I've just seen another question. Yes, I do apologize. It's because I live in a sort of urban zone world, despite being in a rural area, that ITI is too used. Sorry about that. But you rural people use lags a lot, so there we go. Pavel, you have a question. Do you want to ask it yourself quickly, and we'll finish on that one?
Well, it's not really a question. It's just a comment. There is, I think, the bean counters have taken over. The people who set the rules and control everyone to the wazoo. And I'm working in the civil service in Poland, and I see myself do this. We stifle everything through our obsession to hunt down the last euro cent and make sure that everything is correct. So unless something is done from up top, from the Commission, to impose on the paying authorities and the managing agencies an approach that puts in a bit of trust, then the good words about making things efficient and competitive will simply not apply to EU funding.
Okay, a message well heard. And of course, the particular problem is one of proportionality. We essentially have similar rules applying to the construction of the Tagus Bridge in Lisbon to the delivery of a €10,000 project in a local community. And it can make things very heavy at the lower end. Apparently, they used more concrete in the Tagus Bridge than existed in Portugal, according to the... anyway, that's another story. Let's try and wrap up. I take one message, particularly from, I think, from the three speakers, which is that in terms of mobilization, the finance ministry and perhaps also the regional development ministry are particularly important. So using your national, don't go straight away to the Brussels level, look to your national level, because it's those people who will be agreeing the package for the next period. So that perhaps is one quick takeaway, that this should be and perhaps of the two, the finance is the more important. This could be your first port of call. I'm going to hand back to Ursula to conclude, in case I've missed anything out. Ursula, how are we placed? I think your mic might be off again.
I am trying to put it on. No. Sorry, Peter. I don't think we have the time basically to do any more wrapping up. And also we have to give the chance to Joachim really to give us his feedback that we've asked him to do, like a keynote listener. He's listening to our discussion and he's going to tell us what he thinks about it, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to. Joachim, who has used to have multiple hats. I think you'll tell more about it. I understand he's now in the Paris Center of Studies for Perspective and International Information. I'm not sure how to quite translate this into English, but he has been working for OECD as a director for regional development and has other functions with Commissioner Ferreira, as I mentioned before. So from the different perspectives, I think he can still provide us with substantial feedback, and we will then conclude with that.
Thank
Joachim?
you. Yes, I agree.
Thank you, Ursula. Is the sound working well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ursula, and thank you for inviting me to this very important conversation. What I would like to say here, from the timing, I think I have like 5 minutes, not more, right?
7.
7, okay.
We can stretch it a little bit.
In 7 minutes, what I would like to say is the following. From my experience at the OECD in the regional policy and rural development area, and also as the advisor to Commissioner Ferreira, my feeling, you have very good arguments. We have very strong arguments in this sort of policy community of rural regional development. But I do feel that we still are missing a sort of a narrative to link regional and rural development to the more macroeconomic picture. Why I'm saying so? I'm saying so because the current questioning of the cohesion, this is, by the way, this is what it's underlying everything we are saying, right? there is a sort of a questioning of cohesion that comes from this balance between, let's say, equity and efficiency objectives in a society. And this balance is not easy because in the mainstream economics, these two things are not seen as synergetic or complementary. I mean, one enhances the other. They are seen a bit in a kind of a trade-off relationship. I mean, if you focus a lot on equity, on, say, to make things simpler, on redistribution, actually you may hurt the efficiency objectives of the society, of the economy, right? And a bit vice versa, right? And if you want really to focus on efficiency, efficiency means more growth, more productivity, more innovation, etc., you probably would have to accept a certain level of sort of inequality or less equity. And because we are currently in Europe, when you compare ourselves with, in particular with the United States, in a position where we are lagging in terms of efficiency, because our productivity levels compared with the United States have been kind of stagnating, and for example, I live in France, right? In France, in the beginning of the 2000s, on average, there was no difference in labor productivity between France and the US. On average, a worker had exactly more or less the same level of productivity than in the United States, right? The difference between France and the United States in GDP per capita was due to less participation in the labor force in France than in the US. But now the situation is different. Now, between France and the United States, on average, for labor productivity, there is a gap of, say, 20–30%. So if you put together the gap in participation, so less employment in young age workers, for example, and the gap in productivity, you have a big gap in GDP per capita. So people are worried about our efficiency objectives. And because of that, they say, in some sense, that perhaps we should focus no more on increasing the size of the pie by having growth and more productivity, rather than by focusing on redistributing it. So this view, according to me, is not completely correct. Why is not correct? It's not correct because efficiency, of course, if you look at the economy as an average, or you look at the economy as a composition of sectors, fine. But if you look at the economy as a composition of places, of regions and cities, the productivity growth and the growth of GDP, say, is done in a very distributed manner. It's true that in our economies, which are dominated by services, and services like concentration, because consumers, producers need to be close together, is a lot of this productivity growth is generated in big cities, but it's not only. If you look at the composition, basically, depending on the countries, it goes from 2/3 to 50%, but the other 2/3 or 50% are generated by a very long tail of smaller cities, regions, rural areas. So it's not true that you can sort of concentrate everything in terms of generation of productivity in a few single places, and then in some sense compensate the other places for the fact that they are being put a bit aside of this economic gain. So this is not So this idea doesn't correspond to the facts, to the statistics on the composition of aggregate productivity and growth, if you take it by region rather than by sectors or taking economic averages. And the second point is also that we have been talking now for decades about replacing, for example, GDP by things like well-being, being much more sort of careful about sustainability, about social equity sort of considerations, and trying to find the complementarities between these three different things. For example, by focusing on green growth. Green growth is a way of having growth, increasing the size of the pie, and also having more sustainability. Or by talking about inclusive growth, which is a way of getting growth and also a bit more of equity, right? So we cannot suddenly abandon all this focus, all this quest for a more inclusive and sustainable model just by focusing more on economic efficiency and putting a bit on the side the objective of cohesion, right? When you look at the role of the cities, for example, to the composition and to growth of productivity, you see indeed that these economies of agglomeration, they tend to stabilize and then fade away so relatively quickly, I would say. The estimates in the literature is that when you double the size of the city, you get like 4 to 5% more productivity. So you go say from 100,000 inhabitants, you go to 200,000 inhabitants, you get 4 or 5% more. And if you do that up to say 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and even 10 million, of course, you get more and more productivity. But you see that when you reach a threshold of, say, for example, the size of Paris, right? 10 million, right, around. If you want 4 to 5% more productivity in a size like Paris, you need to go to a size of 20 million inhabitants. That's just not possible. So you see that the search for these economies of agglomerations as the main driver of productivity in an economy, they tend to fade away at a certain point. They go very fast in the beginning. So from say small intermediate cities to bigger cities, these economies of agglomeration play a very important role. But then when you have a very big city, then it's sort of the effect for increasing productivity is much more demanding. So you see, for example, in the US, if you are so obsessed by the gaps of productivity in the US, if you look at this composition of productivity in the US, the growth of productivity in the US doesn't come mainly from New York or from Los Angeles, for example. It comes from a series of second-tier cities, which indeed have been extremely dynamic, cities like Houston, Atlanta, Boston, even Washington. These cities have generated a lot of productivity. They have been sort of ecosystems for innovation. And this is perhaps what we are missing a bit in Europe. But it's not only the issue of developing sort of intermediate cities. I think this is a very important objective in Europe, but how these cities are connected to the rest of the economy. Because if you have these islands of prosperity, and these islands of prosperity are not connected to the rest of the economy, you are not getting the other half of the economy. Okay, you're not having this sort of catching up of convergence effects that, in some sense, together with agglomeration, make the growth of productivity and growth of GDP in one economy. So this is why we need so much regional policy, because the regional policy is precisely the policy by having a differentiated approach, what we call place-based, and by focusing on governance, on the partnerships of policy, doing things together, in some sense, makes the mobilization of this potential possible. But this is like a system. I think it's also wrong, for example, to focus only on conversions, on lagging regions, and not looking at the whole picture. I mean by that, in the way the cities should be connected with the rest of the regions. So this is, I think, what we are missing a bit when we talk about these problems of regional development, of local development, of rural development. We miss a bit this connection with the macroeconomic picture, because we can make a lot of the advocacy, and we have strong arguments for this advocacy, but we are not able to convince the people that are in charge of macroeconomic performance and macroeconomic policies. We may end up in a situation where we having now today, where people feel that, okay, these objectives of equity and convergence are important, but perhaps should not be the main priority in these days, because the main priority in these days is indeed to catch up in terms of growth, productivity, and innovation with other areas, in particular with the United States. So this is what I wanted to say, and just to finish, In economics, there are ways of actually connecting equity and efficiency. Economists don't talk a lot about these things, but think about knowledge, think about culture, think about trust, think about even security, think even about carbon abatement. All these are areas where actually the objectives of equity and efficiency are completely connected. For example, I cannot produce knowledge in a distributed manner if there are huge gaps in terms of access to education and health, for example. So equity is very important for efficiency, and of course vice versa. So perhaps we should also develop in economics a bit more of this analysis of these areas where the objectives of equity and efficiency are strongly linked. Like in the same manner, we need more research on the why competitiveness needs sustainability and vice versa. We still making a lot of sort of trade-offs between sustainability and competitiveness, for example, and this is not true. So all the work on green growth was trying to bring the two together. Should we sort of throw that completely away? No. We should be very careful about setting backs in this process towards a more sustainable and green economy and society. So voila, this is what I wanted to say. I didn't want to be a bit philosophical, but I think this idea about narrative is important because ideas at the end drive everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Joachim. And perhaps the real message for the finance ministries is that we need to talk to them in a language that they can understand, but using this new marriage of equity and efficiency and the ideas around territorial cohesion to bring that message to them. I think we should finish there, unless Ursula wants to add a final word.
No, maybe just a little comment that we normally used to announce our next webinar at the end of the previous one. We are not planning, as far as I remember, we're not planning to have another event before the summer break. So we have slightly more time, but look out for our announcements because then we will restart the series in September. So we'll keep in touch, stay on the follow our information, and we will welcome you to our next events. Otherwise, I also thank you very much, all the speakers from my side, and that is probably it. Peter, I don't know if there's anything else, or my colleagues, Joanna Harris from LDnet, do you want to add something? No, and it seems we should let people go to have their dinner or their drinks or whatever it is. And the report will be ready shortly. We will have a report on our website. We will have the recording. We will have all the PowerPoints available on our website. So if you want to go back, or if you have colleagues who are not able to attend, please disseminate this information to them. And thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.